Amy, Savita, we're get started, but I just want to thank everyone who is joining us today also. I know we have been doing this for a couple of days, and one of the mission and vision was to bring awareness of the numerous technology careers that are out there in the world, but then also be able to put this out in a larger platform such as the YouTube channel so that other individuals at the collegiate level in different hiring companies and just women in tech organizations will fully understand that although we hear about boot camps and full stack development, Ruby on Rails, Python, Java, like there are so many other fields out there that will add so much value and will probably resonate with individuals in another way. So really thankful and grateful for Amy and Savita. And yeah, I'm excited. I can get started.
Excellent, thank you. And good morning, good evening, good afternoon to everyone who is joining us, not only for the live session, but who may be downloading this recording in the future. We really want to express our gratitude to you for making the time to learn and to listen, and certainly to the Anita B organization for the series. This is a great team to work with, and certainly it's nice to collaborate and meet new colleagues and professionals like Savita. So thank you so much for your time today. Let's go ahead and dive right in. My name is Amy Tupler, and I consider myself to be a whole product and solution marketing manager. And I adapted this blurb here as something that I've been able to leverage and refine over the years. And I thought it might be helpful for us to kick off this section by sharing this. And since this has worked with students and colleagues along the way, this is a great way to kind of look at your potential career going forward. So the aim of a product marketing manager is to know and understand the market so well that the product fits the user and sells itself. We start by identifying problems and then create products or solutions to address them. In my role, I ask what problems exist in certain markets like healthcare, financial services, or law enforcement. That's just a few examples that my company can help to solve with our current technology or through focused innovation. I talk to lots of people and often observe them in their workplace. I watch industry trends, what other companies are doing to solve the same or similar challenges, and who's developing intellectual property in this problem area. I share the problems that people and companies face, and my company makes a decision around how we would solve those problems or challenges. We define and develop software, applications, or physical products that people and companies want to buy. When we are ready to sell the product or solution, I help launch it into the market. And finally, we go back and listen to our customers again to see how we can improve the product by asking more what questions and starting the cycle of understanding markets all over again. And I love this quote by Ask Marilyn: "To acquire knowledge, one must study, but to acquire wisdom, one must observe." And as a product marketing manager, my best days, my favorite days, are the ones where I've spent time in a cop car, on a tractor with a farmer, or in an emergency room following doctors and nurses. This gives me an opportunity to learn, to listen, and to help solve some of their pain. So how did I get here? In high school, I was an artist, and artists generally observe and they copy what they see. I also wanted to be an architect, but I decided somewhere along the way that that was probably not the career path I was going to follow. So as I tried to summarize my career and what I've learned and the roles that I've taken at different companies along the way, there's that formal education, there's jobs and your profession, and there's the skills. Of course, this is not an exhaustive list that you can reflect on along the way. So I've also plowed energy into nonprofits, but I didn't really include those here. I have to say that when I look at this, I feel very lucky. Each employer that I've worked with, whether it's back in high school or to today, has led or transformed their industry in some way, or they had to transform themselves into what they were going to be, where they focused on the future. So in high school, for example, I did take a lot of odd jobs in restaurants and in the entertainment business. I was Daffy Duck actually for Six Flags Atlantis. Someday you can ask me about that. But the skills that you pick up along the way are dealing with people, food and beverage, what it means to be in the entertainment industry, and also a lot about intellectual property. And in the 90s, I look at my career as being one that was focused on marketing, the 4 Ps or the 5 Ps of marketing minus product. I was primarily focused on trade shows, event management, public relations, advertising, marketing communications. And in the 2000s, I transitioned into a technology-focused company. I spent a decade with Motorola, and then I dabbled in some of my own business ownership. And then in the 2010s, I joined General Dynamics. I worked for RIM, which ultimately rebranded itself to BlackBerry. I transitioned over to Nuance and to Honeywell. All along the way, picking up lots of different skills, including hot skills like Digital Six Sigma, becoming pragmatic marketing certified, taking on program and project management work, and also serious decisions among human-centered design and others. Some of the products that I worked on along the way, you've probably seen in your everyday life. I'm really excited about the fact that I've had an opportunity by joining product marketing management in the tech sector to work on hardware, embedded software, customization tools, support services like hooks and APIs, applications, and the development community, policies, emerging requirements, particularly things when it comes to e-waste and boxes and cardboard, GDPR, and others that are emerging either regulatory requirements or have to do with other environmental considerations, accessories, ilities, licensing, telemetry, mergers and acquisitions, projects that included portfolio rationalization, vertical segmentation, subsegment, SKUs, business and process transformation, such as moving from perpetual licenses to everybody's in SaaS, PaaS, or HaaS, and so much more. And with that, Savita is going to give you an introduction into her background and experience.
Hello, good morning, everyone. Good evening, good afternoon. So my journey is slightly different. I never actually started off thinking I was going to be in product management, product marketing. As most folks in the tech industry, I believed engineering was the most important role and I was contributing to a lot of innovation. I had a moment of epiphany back in 2001 when we had the previous crash. I think for a lot of people who haven't seen what a downturn looks like in the past 10 years of tremendous growth, for me, that was an eye-opening moment because it wasn't just building great technology. It was also about how you respond to the market. Are you building the right product? Is your team agile enough to change and relook at this strategy? So over the years, as an engineer and then post MBA, I moved into product marketing, product management, and I also had the opportunity to work across many different technologies, vertical solutions, and also in field-facing roles, and also work globally. I've learned that to be successful, it's not about the technology. Engineering is definitely is a very critical component, but it's really about what is the problem you're trying to solve, how you can relate to customers, as Amy also emphasized. How can you understand and kind of spend time with them to understand that you have identified their unique situation, their unique problem, and you are developing something that is sustainable and is uniquely differentiated. Personally, for me, product marketing has allowed me to blend my technical and analytical skills as well as my creative side. I didn't start out as an artist, but I had a lot of the leanings, and I have been able to put some of that to use as we create interesting materials which are customer facing, from videos or case studies and stuff. The other thing that I'm a firm believer is continuous learning. I believe that as the pace of innovation in the tech industry keeps changing, and it's a very exponential phase right now that we are in. My current interest is in the areas of artificial intelligence, machine learning, to help us prepare better for a AI assisted future. So here's a quick glimpse of my journey. As I mentioned, my first job in grad school was as a system administrator for a genomics lab. It was a lot of fun because I actually enjoyed biology, funnily. And this was an opportunity to both help with the lab as well as understand a little bit about how technology is being used in biotech. I did that for 2 years, and post my grad school, I actually came to Cisco in engineering. So in the early part of my career, it was all about learning the fundamentals of computer engineering, computer programming, project management, advanced distributed computing, and networking. At Cisco, I had the opportunity to be involved grounds up from product innovation, product design, launch. I also learned that when you're building very large scale products, a lot of effort is around team leadership, collaboration, project management, product management. I also learned that as engineers, when we are leading projects and when we have to defend our ideas, you have to also develop a lot of public speaking skills. And usually as engineers, we are not informed of those things, but that's, even if you're considering a growth path within the engineering organization, that's public speaking is a very important skill. As I mentioned earlier, after dabbling in engineering for a long time, almost 7 years, I decided that it was time to explore other roles in tech industry. And just like what you guys are going through right now, I explored. In those days, we didn't have Anita Borg, so you guys are lucky. I actually took a lot of courses in continuing education programs, and that exposed me to the world of marketing, product management, marketing strategy, finance, accounting, and I decided to do a full-time MBA. So post MBA, I had a very interesting career in product marketing. I also worked for a services company, helping them with productizing their IPs. And so a lot of work was also around patents and how do you protect your own intellectual property? When does it make sense to file a patent versus when do you make a decision to keep it as an IP? I also was involved in a lot of emerging technologies at Cisco, where I got involved with vertical solutions, smart cities, healthcare, and education. The other aspect of product and solutions marketing that I learned during some of those early innovation phases is that we have to do a lot of industry research to understand the customer, the segment, the subsegments, how to identify what the propensity to buy models are. So there's a lot of analytical elements to the job. There's also how do you price, right? What are you going to do per user pricing? Are you looking at pricing for the whole product, the whole solution? How do you price the hardware, software? What kind of licensing makes sense? The other piece that is also now becoming very common is, given that there is a lot of digital transformation that's happening across multiple industries, and there's also been a tremendous innovation over the last 3 or 4 decades, there are already existing systems and software, and there are vertical specific innovation that has also gone in the last few decades. So when you're developing a new product, you have to also understand that your product is going to work in an environment. There are other different technologies, and how do you integrate with them? And so how can you develop a whole solution for your customers? What kind of strategic partnerships you bring to the table? That becomes also a critical element of your go-to-market and product marketing strategy. The other piece is also around sales enablement. Your sales team is the front line talking to customers or your channel partners or your resellers. And so how do you enable them to tell the right story and message your product appropriately? Since moving, the other thing was I also worked in Bangalore and in Singapore. And so I moved back here to the Bay Area in 2015. And more recently, I've been involved with a lot of segment and new vertical business innovation. Given that marketing has also changed tremendously, and we'll talk a little more in the next few slides, there were also aspects like digital marketing, content marketing, and the business model change with SaaS, software as a service, and cloud. So I've kind of also now dabbled a lot in that part of the industry segment. So let me give you a quick sort of overview of what the process looks like. And Amy touched upon this a little bit. So this is a little bit more graphical view. As you can see, there is a customer, and the customer could be an industry segment, an industry sub-vertical. So for example, in healthcare is a very big market, right? So there is the provider, right? The actual hospital or clinic that you go to for a service. There is the insurance provider, right? So the payer. There is also the pharma industry, which is basically providing the medical support system, right? So the medicines and other things. There is the medical devices. So healthcare as a segment is a very big segment. You can kind of sub-segment and say, okay, I want to be in the medical device thing, or I am focusing on the insurance market, or I can be focusing on the provider, which is the clinic, or it could be about the doctor, right? So you can, maybe you're kind of doing an AI assisted recording tool to help doctors record the session instead of actually personally typing it out. So there are definitely different interventions and different ways to kind of understand your customer segment and trying to see where is the problem and what problem do you feel most compelled to solve. Usually that's kind of like the early innovation phase. As you develop the product, you're going to have a continuous feedback loop as you keep innovating. So you start with identifying the problem. You start with defining what is it that you're going to do to help ease the problem. What is the product? What is the product definition? What is the feature? What kind of enhancements is it if it is the second iteration, right? And then you spend time actually building and testing and validating the product. You define what your pricing strategy is, how you're going to, or if this is a second or third iteration, how are you going to upsell and cross-sell? Essentially, what's your monetization model? You are also going to work in parallel on defining the product, how you're going to message and position it. Are there competitive players? Is it complementary? How are you going to differentiate and explain to the customer how your solution solves their problem? Then there is the promotion piece, which is basically the marketing channels of communication. How are you going to let the customer know that you have a solution to their problem? What avenues make most sense? For example, going back to the healthcare thing, if you know that your solution is specifically for the doctors, there might be some journals that you would want to advertise in. You would work with providers who work with doctors, for example, things like that. And then there is the sales go-to-market, which is essentially where do you meet your customer? Is it conferences? Is it just the website? What kind of educational events or webinars you can hold to educate your customer about having understood their problem and the specific solution you're developing for them. The other aspect of product marketing, and this is true probably for all the functions across any big organization or tech company, and that's around collaboration. And I cannot emphasize this enough. And particularly in product marketing, right? When you start off in the early stages, it's much more analytical work, and as you kind of progress into the promotion phase, the work becomes largely external focused. And we basically work with different functions in the organization, product management being key, Product management is often the folks who drive the engineering roadmap. There is also the sales and the direct and the channel partners, as well as your outbound marketing function. It requires a lot of analysis, a lot of collaboration across different teams, so you can understand and define the product and articulate the message, and also communicate via different channels. So here on the box, I have listed out a few of the marketing deliverables. As you can see, further along, as we go through some of the job descriptions, there's a lot of different deliverables. The other aspect here at the bottom you see is that there are many different ways to reach out to customers. And in today's economy, as I mentioned, given the multitude of different technologies that your customers are already being exposed to, or things that they already have in play, you may have many different routes to reach out to your customers. So there could be technology partners, as I mentioned, a strategic go-to-market motion with your partners. You could have resellers. These are folks who resell your technology because they have either geographical presence. For example, if you're a US company, you would tie with a partner in APAC to resell your technology. There could be also vertical expertise, that is technologies or partners who have vertical experience. For example, you have a horizontal product, but you want to verticalize it and sell it into, say, healthcare. You would partner with somebody who actually does deployment for hospitals and clinics, and they have the expertise of those systems and processes, business processes. On the marketing side, you have industry influencers, you have digital media agencies, and then finally, you also have analysts who influence what your customers purchase, and also the press. So that's just a quick summary of what the role entails, who we work with in the organization. And again, as your company becomes bigger, there are a lot more functions involved. For example, there could be a strategic planning office, which could help you with a lot of the analytical work. There is the M&A organization, specifically if you are looking to buy instead of build, to beef up your portfolio. There could be other technology partners with whom you're doing joint solutions. So this picture gets a lot more complex in large companies. In a smaller company, these are sort of the most basic functions that you necessarily have to work with.
Yeah, so thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity to kind of dovetail on that particular slide, because as you start to look at product marketing management as a profession, where you can take your technical skills, maybe your public speaking skills, your intellectual curiosity, your excitement about being in the field and learning and listening and observing and trying to create and craft new solutions. The job descriptions will vary, and Savita has already touched on this a little bit, which is, depending on the size of your company, the coast that you might be on, East Coast, West Coast, or even geographically distributed, the job descriptions will vary, the leveling will vary, the expectations will vary, and the overlap may be quite challenging, particularly if it is a small company versus a large, globally complex organization. This is kind of near and dear to my heart. I have been doing an audit of product marketing management job descriptions that you may find on LinkedIn or on any of the job boards or even on companies' career sites. And it can be kind of maddening when you think about it, because the expectations will really be varied depending on the culture, on the origination of the business, whether or not there have been mergers and acquisitions as part of the corporate strategy. And so it's important for you, as you start to look at a career in product marketing, and kind of keep a buyer beware. So what I did here was just basically do a quick audit. You saw Savita take you through the overview of what a product marketing manager in more of an intellectual capacity is expected to do. And then there's the practical implementation at different types of organizations. So you see here some of the keywords that Savita has already shared with you: partnering with sales, driving success, pricing, channel and marketing, insights on market, customers, and competitors. Certainly, subject matter expertise, customer workflows, gaining and influencing different parts of the stakeholder organizations, accountable for results, motivated, great communicator. Here you see on this first example, healthcare sector. So what I've done is, this is a product marketing manager's set of job descriptions. On this page, this is representative of a very large social media platform, a large global distributor, and a embedded software company. So these are three different job descriptions for a product marketing manager. It gets even more complex when you start to think about a senior product marketing manager. And so there will be different levelings of expectations as well. And as I said previously, it can be a little bit maddening because on this particular slide in the two blue boxes, we're talking about 5 years experience. And if I go backwards, you'll see even at the product marketing manager without any seniority, companies are still expecting anywhere from 2 to 5 years, or even 8 years if you look at the one of the preferred qualifications to the very far right. So as you progress in your career, really look at the job descriptions, the role descriptions, and think about what the company is asking and the complexity of the organization. And then just for fun, I added the director of product marketing management to the very far right. And this is actually from a global consulting company that's running a business practice and advising companies in all different types of spaces. And as you progress, let's say in your seniority, you start to prove your skill sets, you'll see that the expectation is that by year 15, somewhere at 10 to 15, you're moving up in terms of responsibility, either to manage people or to manage more complex projects or to be more positioned with the senior leadership team on the portfolio, on the infrastructure to support your portfolio or your plans, and certainly around organizational planning and portfolio management. So this was really an audit for you. But as you're reflecting on your career today, I adapted a slide that I really love from Serious Decisions. And this is in the product marketing management competencies table. And I hope that you walk away wanting to learn more. And I'll talk about that in the next slide. But there's really 3 key disciplines for a product marketing manager. It's your go-to-market strategy, it's your market and audience identification, and messaging and content. And there are certain knowledge bases that you want to have, skills that you need to develop, processes that you want to employ, and tools and technologies that you want to leverage. And so I adapted this in terms of sharing some of this with you. There's more in terms of very clear competencies all along the way on a continuum from basic to advanced. And I won't go through all of these today, but the idea is that as you enter or you transition into a product marketing manager role, you would want to, let's say in the go-to-market strategy discipline, want to show your basic marketing responsibilities. Your team will give you some responsibilities to kind of cut your teeth. And that as you advance in your career, you'll be a really great expert for quickly targeting an offer, looking around the organization to interlock and align with stakeholders and move. And generally in most companies, especially in tech, they're going to want you to move quickly. So your ability to kind of assess and execute is a very short timeline. And then on the tools and technology, what's really great is that in product marketing, there have been a lot of technology platforms that are designed to actually help us do our jobs more effectively and more efficiently, and not only as marketing professionals, but then to interlock with a technology platform with other parts of the organization. And I can share a little bit of insight with you along the way. And so I would encourage you to think about product marketing as these 3 critical disciplines if you're early on in your career. And if you're starting to build your knowledge and your competencies, to think about how you can move into the advanced stage and then perhaps position yourself for more responsibility along the way. And as a plug, I really wish that companies would sit down and look at their job descriptions and look at their performance management systems and really measure people in the product marketing world on some of these key competencies. It would make everyone's life very different if we were all being measured in the same way in terms of effectiveness. So I mentioned I adapted that previous slide from Serious Decisions. And for product marketing folks and for product management folks, There are the internal cultures that you may absorb if you go into some larger companies or more established companies, and you probably will recognize some of these tactics or some of these descriptions or even methodologies because they've been adapted along the way. But if you're newer to product marketing and management, it might be really helpful to just start with investigating some of the following companies that are known to train product management and product marketing people so that we all speak a similar language, so that we have a similar culture, and we understand what to expect from one another as professionals, whether you're in a company that's a startup and you're pragmatic certified, or you join a company that's well established, maybe been in business for 100 years. That language, that DNA is highly transferable, and I would encourage you to seek or learn from these organizations. Very simply, if you haven't explored AHA for marketing, they've launched a new component of their platform. There's also AHA for product management and road mapping. There's a great book out there that is really a culture of lovability. I highly recommend that. You can take public classes from Pragmatic Institute. They've rebranded themselves given their acquisition and their focus on data. And I would encourage you to really learn about the pragmatic marketing system, which allows you to have emphasis in strategy, technical, or in marketing roles. In some companies, a product management or a product marketing manager may be expected to do all of these functions or at least lead. And then there's also 280 Group, which has a heavy emphasis on innovation and upstream capture of voice of customer. There's Serious Decisions, which has their product management and marketing model, where you align marketing, product, and sales to activities and deliverables. There is certification as well. There's Product School, which isn't a visual here, but this is certainly that we would both encourage you to take a look at because it's a way for you to get on the same page with practitioners in this space. And then there's plenty of other opportunities for you. For example, if you're working for a company, to leverage your tuition management, your tuition reimbursement program that may be a benefit to you, where you could, let's say, enroll in a marketing program at a university that has a degree at the end. Some companies will be willing to support a certification from Stanford or Northwestern through online or other educational venues if you receive a grade. But then there's also a lot of free resources that are available to you as well. Everything from checking out visuals on Pinterest to making sure that you have an opportunity to work with your manager as part of your development plan, and maybe even ask for some training budget so that you can go and get a certification. What I find most amazing about some of these platforms and these frameworks and models is that if your entire team or parts of your organization are all operating on the same page, it really accelerates your ability to interact and to be successful because people know what to expect from you, and the job description doesn't become super fluid along the way. It is very helpful to know that you will be able to go back to your framework and be able to leverage your understanding and your knowledge and to speak very confidently about what the next steps might be. So if you aren't already certified in some of these different product marketing and management models, push your manager, get it, pursue it, try and find the money. This really helps you, and you can immediately apply some of these tools and tactics to your company. So they asked us to just give you some career advice as well. My career advice here is pretty straightforward, and I tried to do this in a visual way, but I really would encourage you to move to the heat. What does that mean? That means that if your company is undergoing a transformation, if there's a new hot project, or you're concerned about a transformation, or you have a big customer that's got a problem to solve, ask your manager, ask your business leaders what the most pressing problems are of your business, and try and get onto the team that's helping to solve those problems. You will learn fast, you will hopefully add value over time, and you will learn who the key players are in your business. Moving to the heat is a great way of kind of jumping into the deep end of the pool, pushing yourself, stretching yourself, but also networking along the way. Getting out of your office is my next one. It's actually something that pragmatic marketing has a term for. It's called nihito. Nothing important happens in the office. As I mentioned at the top, I like to ride in the front seat of a police car, and I love to be in an emergency room or in a doctor's office trying to understand how to get to the next step. I would encourage you to show growth, and that doesn't always mean going up the management ladder. It may mean taking a new assignment. It may mean going into services or going into hardware. But it means that you want to show growth and you want to pick up new skills along the way. And that could be internally at your organization. It can be as a volunteer, like with Anita B. or Grace Hopper. It certainly can be by extending yourself to other teams that are also involved in the heat. I would encourage you to learn to work backwards. Always, always, always think about, especially as a product marketing manager, that moment of delight when you find something delicious about a product or a service that you've experienced and you remember what that felt like, can just put yourself in the shoes of the product management or marketing team that helped to deliver that service. A good example that I always have is the first time I opened the door of a Mustang that I had rented at night, and I didn't realize that the door had a light that projected the Mustang onto the ground. I thought that was the coolest thing. I just walked around for days talking about how amazingly cool and simple and delightful it was because it was unexpected. And I thought about all the engineers and all the product managers and the user experience designers who had to think of something really fun and cool just to make me happy. And embrace the feminine, find those male advocates. There are things about women in technology that are unique, that allow us to bring a different perspective. And don't be afraid to execute and use your voice and work with great male advocates who support our ideas and our need to design great products and services for women, but also extend that to all sorts of users. And then finally, have a professional and a personal roadmap. Unfortunately, life happens, so you're going to have to be flexible. I'm very lucky that I had the opportunity to move to Motorola when I did. It was my first tech company, my first job. I was a product planner. My first product management tech job was to basically work on a keypad and multi-tap, which was pretty straightforward, but also quite painful because we had unique keys that we had to implement in some products that we were working on. And it was the bottom of the barrel job, but I learned so much along the way. I cut my teeth in product management and marketing at Motorola. And I have to say, for 10 years, I was extremely happy. And I intersected with a company that at the time really valued diversity. A lot of the women that have gone on to lead other companies around the globe came from Motorola. I am very proud to count some of those as my mentors and friends. And they also valued working parents. So we had childcare on site. I can't imagine my world as in tech without that support system. So seek out companies that are supportive. Push your management team to do the right thing for men and women and all of the workers, but be flexible because I have teenagers right now. Life doesn't always go as planned. So be willing to take a step back in order to make personal and professional gains.
Wow.
Savita.
Thank you, Amy. That was wonderful. And I echo everything that Amy has shared. Be bold, be courageous, be willing to experiment, but be willing to speak up and ask for what you want. In my early engineering career, that was something that I did not know. And that's true irrespective of where you are in the tech industry, which is to listen to yourself, listen to your gut, and learn how to speak up and learn how to speak up skillfully. So it's not just about speaking up, but also learning to speak skillfully. And so going back to my own career journey and what I have learned, like Amy said, I was extremely fortunate to work at Cisco, which was super supportive of women. And there were lots of great role models, many successful women leaders across the organization, from sales, from engineering, marketing. I was very fortunate to work with some of the best minds in the technology industry and also have role models and mentors. So I wouldn't be here without the support and the sponsorship and the mentorship, and also the opportunity to work in different roles. So as the company grew, for example, when I started, Cisco was a $2 billion company. When I left in 2014, we were close to $50 billion. Now, when a company grows that fast, that too globally, the opportunities also come from different areas of the business. And the one thing I would say is also to look for stretch assignments and to seek out projects where you think something interesting might come up in the future. So I started in product marketing after my MBA. After a year of dabbling with startups, I actually went back to Cisco as Cisco started a globalization team. And that was really a lot of fun because we were working at a global scale, but also had the opportunity to work in our local offices. So for me, it was to work out of Bangalore, be close to my family, but still be able to contribute at a global scale. The unique opportunity of being in an emerging market also meant that we could conceptualize and contribute to Cisco's opportunity to build for emerging markets. So sometimes it's important, like Amy said, you have to be in the front seat with the customer, right? And which means that if you're developing very interesting products, whether it's a Nokia cell phone or even a router for emerging market, the cost and the features, the on the ground reality is very different in different geographies. And so being in that sort of local ecosystem and seeing how customers, what features make sense, especially from a price point perspective, as well as from the ability to work across different technologies to build solutions at a different scale. For me, that was the other opportunity that came along. In some companies, again, so some of these roles are more common as a company grows. You're less likely to see some of these roles at smaller companies. But that doesn't mean that they don't do vertical marketing. They might, but not at the scale or with a dedicated team. Usually product marketing in smaller companies has to both do the vertical as well as the horizontal marketing. Then post vertical solutions marketing, I also had the opportunity to work in segment marketing. Now, segment marketing is where you're marketing to a specific ecosystem or to a specific industry segment. Could be horizontal, could be a vertical. And then also just the leadership experience of managing a team and having more direct ownership of sales success. This was the role I did at Singapore, where I was managing a regional team. Now, very different experience. The thing that I learned from my experience, which I would like to pass on, especially for folks who are more Silicon Valley centric, is that in today's global economy, awareness of global cultures, customs, and customers and interconnected businesses ecosystems is critical for success. As you can see, there's a lot of trade tariff discussion happening, and you can visibly see what's going on and how it affects our economy in the US and the effect of global economies on our economy and vice versa. For example, in the 2008 crash with the financial meltdown, I was in APAC and I saw how some of the economies in APAC were actually sheltered from the financial meltdown because their banking systems were not so heavily interlinked to the banking systems in the US and some of the Western countries. So if you have the opportunity and you're younger in your career where you don't have the family or the responsibilities, I encourage you to, if you're in a big company, take advantage of doing a job rotation outside the US so you get an opportunity to see a global company, how it operates, what it means to work with global customers. In a career journey, you're going to have a plan, but as Amy said, life happens. Look for opportunities that help you grow as a personal, both professionally and personally. Never regret any decision. I'm a big believer of improv. There are no mistakes. You don't make any mistakes. Any decision has its own consequences, and you just have to rise from there. You never know where your next opportunity might come from. So for example, when we look at things like Internet of Things, even though my undergrad was in electrical engineering and I didn't do a whole lot since I left my undergrad. I mean, when I look at Internet of Things and things like smart cities and smart grids, that foundational knowledge is still super useful because we are looking at different ecosystems now, which require, which come through an intersection of digital transformation technologies as well as more traditional manufacturing systems, electrical grid systems, and so on. So there's a lot of cross-disciplinary work that is going to emerge over the next decade. And so make sure that you're constantly learning and build a forward growth path for yourself.
Great. So Tasha, we've arrived at some Q&A. Can you help us out and maybe get us started?
Yeah, definitely. So I think as I'm listening to y'all, I really don't know. Like, let's say I wanted to get into product management. I really don't know where or how I should start. It looks like you were like, hey, you know, you could go to Productmatic, you know, like lessons, or like how do you really do it? Or is it one of those things also that you just go to someone who's in the innovation at your job, and you volunteer to be on their product, right? I have no idea, like, because I think I'm interested in this, but I'm just like, what do I do now with all this information?
Yeah, so a great place to start is find product management individuals within your company, find product marketing people, or even go to your chief marketing officer and ask for like an informational interview because you want to learn more. And people are always really happy to speak to you about, you know, what their job function is, how they might be looking to expand their team, and really think about, you know, what skills you have that could be applicable to that role. Product marketing in many organizations is different than product management. There's also program management. So there may be a lot of overlap in your company, and there may be different executive owners and sponsors. If you're in a startup, you may be expected to do a lot of stuff and pick it up along the way. So it might just really depend on kind of where you work today. But I absolutely would encourage you that if you are really interested in product marketing and product management, to go get some training from Pragmatic Institute, from Serious Decisions, or from 280 Group. You'll learn a lot. If you attend their public classes, you're going to meet people in the business, and you might even be able to, Savita's point, find your next role by networking with really great people who may be sending an entire team to be on the same page.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah, so let me just add one more thing, right? So when you are looking to make a transition, it's always better to do the transition within your existing company. Right?
Mm-hmm.
It's easier to kind of talk to different folks, like Amy said. That's what I did. You know, as I was exploring to move beyond engineering, I spoke to the customer support team. I had one-on-one sessions with product management, product marketing. I literally went on an interview tour across the company to see where I actually would enjoy being. And for me, it was about being close to the innovation. Like, coming from an engineering career, for me, it was important that I'm still close to the innovation process, but not necessarily writing code, right? So that was my sort of like the clarity that I found. And so now if you're in an outward facing role, what are the skills that are missing, right? So how can I acquire that? And so that's how I took all the courses that I took. And then eventually, when the right role opened up, I basically went back into Cisco in that right role. Now, if you're trying to find a role outside your company and you don't have the prior skill set, it might be harder for somebody to give you that job because most people are looking for somebody who already has the experience. So it's easier to make that transition within your company, and if the company is growing, they are willing to give it to somebody who has already a good understanding of the culture, the ecosystem, the technology, the customer, and so on. So usually that's probably a recommended approach from my perspective.
Yeah, and if you're a technical team member today, there's a couple of different great advocates and allies that are really helpful for clarity. I've seen people make the career transition from a technical role by, let's say, tailing the solution architects, right? The tip of the spear with customers who are looking at their environment, they're trying to figure out what the requirements are. Very often, if you have solution architects or pre-sales technical folks, that's another great place to listen to customers and get very close to customers. You'll figure out quickly if that's an environment that you want to be in. Ask your product marketing people if you can go on a focus group with them. See if you can even just go and take notes. Listen to some of their voice of customer downloads that they get from their sales team if there's a program such as that in your organization. And you'll start to get a feeling of the pressures, of the qualities that are needed, and the skill sets that you might want to develop. But it'll also help you network with the people in your organization to get some of that experience. Tag-alongs, ride-alongs are great. Don't be afraid to ask. Raise your hand and say, I'm thinking about a career change. I'm thinking about how I can help. I want to do more. I want to pitch in. How can I help? That's that kind of moving to the heat. And I pulled up here just something for you to think about. Gartner has done a review of, the top marketing skills for today and tomorrow. And so there's their hard skills and the soft skills. And the hard skills, a lot of technical folks can bring analytics to the table, but then there's the other side of the coin, which is, creativity, resourcefulness, adaptability, collaboration, and leadership. And those are the things that you definitely want to work on. And that's all part of networking and learning on the job.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm going to try to sign up as soon as possible because I feel like I have some gaps. This is definitely something that I think even other people on the line, like we definitely do work, or we're definitely doing things where we analyze, especially if you're entrepreneurial, you're building things anyway, right? So
yeah.
those are things I'm thinking. Any other questions, y'all? Because, I love this. I'm all geek now. I'm about to Google all the different stuff.
So I would also add the first maybe best question to ask yourself, since product marketing management can be overlapped with product management, user experience. Anybody can write a user story in the agile form. I've taught salespeople how to write really great user stories. But at the end of the day, I think the biggest thing you want to be able to say gets you up and going in the morning is this first item here, buyer empathy. If you gravitate to buyers, you find those delighters, you really enjoy listening to pain and trying to creatively figure out, do I buy, build, or partner to solve that pain? That's the core, the essence of what you need to have that fire in your belly every day. And if you do, then you can help write messaging. You can develop, a solution strategy. You can put together sales enablement documentation and move a pipeline along. But you really have to want to be with buyers, and you have to want to be in the field, and you kind of just got to get jazzed by like, hey, I can go fix that, and I can move an entire organization or a mountain to get there. And so those are the kinds of things you just want to kind of focus on in your development. Savita, would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. So going back to Natasha's question, it's really about doing, and this is true for, I think, any role, right? It's to kind of do a self-analysis of what your current skill sets are and look at what gaps you might have to your desired role. And this is true at every level, right? So even within product marketing, as you kind of grow in your career, and you want to go to the next leadership role, to look at what gaps you might have and how to fill those gaps, right? So if you're looking at product management versus product marketing, understand that they're actually two sides of the same coin. There is an overlap of roles. If you still feel closer to being in with engineering and looking at the engineering roadmap and kind of being closer, then maybe product management is the right approach versus, let's say, you like to write and you like to create. And then in that case, product marketing might be the most appropriate thing for you. In terms of customer exposure, again, it differs from company to company, as Amy identified in the job descriptions. They vary across the organization, across industries, across the stage of the company that they're in. But in Cisco, both product management and product marketing were responsible for talking to customers and doing customer briefings. And it was a joint responsibility. In some other companies, I have seen product marketing, not be as close to the customer and even visit with the customer, which to me is a big gap for the organization, because if you want to do the right kind of messaging and communication and develop the empathy to write from a customer's perspective, you have to be out and about, right? Amy said, like, get out of the office, right? And do more with customers and talk to customers. And personally, for me, that's the most important learning experience. It also helps you develop your leadership skills. So that would be my recommendation, is to do a self-assessment and awareness. Are you an introvert and extrovert? And do you like to write? Because product marketing definitely requires a lot more writing than product management. I had a friend in product marketing, and he said he had a test that he would give people. He would say, can you write a 500-word article in half an hour? And if you're not able to half an hour or an hour, let's say, research and once you research the company, can you write something in an hour or so? And if you're not good at writing, that would be again a big skill set gap. I have seen product marketers in roles, and they complain that they're not good writers, and they're pretty open about it, but then you rely on agencies to do the writing for you, and it does not come out exactly the same way as if you were to do a lot of the writing. And that's my recommendation and my personal belief, that you have to be able to write and articulate.
Agreed. And that's actually in this purple row in the bottom as well. Clearly communicate ideas written and in slides, create value propositions and messaging for sales tools, presentations, all sorts of different types of venues. And do you have the ability to make complexity simple? And sometimes it just boils down to, can I make something simple and straightforward?
All righty, thank you.
Thank you for your time and participation today.
All right, take care, bye.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.